On February 1, 2023, the state of Texas carried out the execution of Wesley Ruiz. He was 43 years old at the time of his death. The execution took place in Huntsville, Texas. Ruiz had been convicted of capital murder. The charge stemmed from an incident that occurred in 2007. He was sentenced to death for the killing of Dallas Police Senior Cpl. Mark Nix. The execution proceeded as scheduled. This occurred despite significant ongoing legal challenges. These challenges raised questions about the state's execution protocols and the fairness of his original trial. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. The events leading to Ruiz's conviction unfolded in 2007. Police were engaged in a high-speed chase. Officers were searching for a murder suspect. Wesley Ruiz was the driver of the vehicle being pursued. The chase concluded when Ruiz's vehicle slid off the road. It came to a stop. Senior Cpl. Mark Nix approached the stopped vehicle. He attempted to break the passenger side window. He was using a baton. At that moment, Ruiz fired a shot. The bullet struck Senior Cpl. Nix in the chest. The shot was fired through the back passenger window of the vehicle. Senior Cpl. Mark Nix was fatally wounded. His death led to the capital murder charge against Wesley Ruiz. The incident marked a tragic loss for the Dallas Police Department and the Nix family. In the moments before his execution, Wesley Ruiz offered a final statement. He directed his words towards the family of the victim. He offered an apology to Mark and the Nix family. Ruiz expressed a hope that his execution would bring closure. He stated this hope was for the Nix family. He acknowledged the pain caused by his actions. He also expressed gratitude to his own family and friends. He thanked them for their support throughout his years on death row. Their presence had been a source of strength for him. Ruiz had a specific message for his children. He encouraged them to stand tall. He urged them to make him proud in their lives. He also sought to reassure his children. He told them not to worry about him. He conveyed a sense of acceptance regarding his fate. His final words were directed to the warden. He stated simply that he was ready. He used phrases like ready to fly and ready to ride. Witnesses noted his demeanor. He did not turn to look at the relatives and friends of Senior Cpl. Nix. They were present in the witness room to observe the execution. A significant legal battle preceding Ruiz's execution involved the drugs used. The core issue was the state's practice regarding the expiration dates of lethal injection drugs. Specifically, the drug pentobarbital was at the center of the controversy. Pentobarbital is the sole drug used in Texas executions. The state had been using doses past their original manufacturer-assigned expiration dates. This practice became the subject of legal challenges. The argument against this practice was based on the U.S. Constitution. Opponents contended that using expired or potentially compromised drugs constituted cruel and unusual punishment. This would be a violation of the Eighth Amendment. The state of Texas defended its practice. They argued that they had procedures in place for extending expiration dates. This was done after retesting the potency of the drug doses. The state cited a reason for this practice. There was a shortage of pharmacies willing to produce pentobarbital for executions. This scarcity led the state to seek ways to extend the usability of their existing supply. Texas courts had consistently ruled in favor of the state. They had allowed the practice of using retested, extended-date drugs to continue. These rulings had upheld the state's protocol against numerous challenges. However, recent litigation introduced a new element. A lower state court issued a temporary order. This order specifically addressed the drug issue in certain cases. A lower court order required the state to use only new execution drugs. This requirement was to remain in effect until a full trial could be held on the matter. It aimed to halt the use of extended-date drugs temporarily. The state quickly appealed this order. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals reviewed the lower court's decision. The appeals court ultimately overturned the temporary order. The reasoning provided by the appeals court was jurisdictional. They ruled that the lower court lacked the authority to issue an order that effectively canceled an execution. This decision cleared the way for executions to proceed using the state's existing drug supply. Adding to the controversy was the Texas Department of Criminal Justice's non-disclosure. TDCJ had not publicly revealed the acquisition of new lethal injection drugs. This information came to light through other means. A discovery of new drugs was made by the Texas Tribune. This was achieved through a public information request. The request revealed details about recent drug acquisitions. The details showed that TDCJ had received 8 new doses of pentobarbital. These doses were acquired on January 5th, just weeks before Ruiz's scheduled execution. This acquisition contradicted the state's narrative of a complete shortage necessitating the use of older drugs. One of these new vials was used shortly after its acquisition. A new dose was administered for the execution of Robert Fratta on January 10th. This occurred just days after the new supply arrived. TDCJ offered a defense for its actions and non-disclosure. They stated a desire to preserve their ability to use any drugs in their inventory. This included both newly acquired and retested doses. The state's counter-argument in court also addressed the retesting process. They argued that their method of retesting potency was not known to be torturous. This was in response to claims that the degradation of the drug could cause undue pain. Furthermore, the state argued against the applicability of certain regulations. They contended that state pharmaceutical regulations should not apply to drugs used in executions. This position sought to exempt the execution process from standard drug handling rules. The lower court order had referenced specific regulations. It cited storage requirements from the Texas Pharmacy Act. These regulations specify conditions like storage duration at frozen, refrigerated, and room temperatures. TDCJ's statements regarding the storage of the new drugs were ambiguous. They did not specify the current storage conditions. However, they suggested that the new drugs might not meet the strict storage requirements outlined in the lower court's overturned order. This legal battle over drug potency and supply highlighted ongoing transparency issues. It also underscored the lengths to which the state goes to carry out executions. The debate over what constitutes cruel and unusual punishment in this context remains active. In addition to the drug issue, Wesley Ruiz's case involved claims of racial bias. These claims formed the basis of a separate appeal. The argument centered on alleged bias during his original trial. The appeal contended that jurors used racist language and anti-Hispanic stereotypes. Ruiz is Hispanic. The defense argued that this bias influenced the jury's sentencing decision. Specifically, the defense claimed that bias led the jury to impose the death penalty. They presented evidence to support this claim. This evidence included affidavits from jurors themselves. The affidavits provided examples of the alleged bias. One affidavit stated that the jury foreman used racist language. The foreman allegedly referred to Ruiz as a thug and punk. Another example from the affidavits involved expressions of fear. The foreman allegedly expressed fear of Hispanic people. This fear was linked to a belief that they were likely gang members. The foreman also reportedly described feeling threatened by a person believed to be Mexican. This person was seen in a flashy car. This anecdote was presented as further evidence of the foreman's bias. The affidavits also detailed the foreman's influence on other jurors. The foreman reportedly convinced another juror who was hesitant about the death penalty. This hesitant juror ultimately voted for the death sentence. Despite the evidence presented, the appeal was ultimately unsuccessful. The claims of racial bias were reviewed by the trial court in Dallas County. That court denied the appeal. The case was subsequently appealed to the highest court. The U.S. Supreme Court also reviewed the claims. The Supreme Court ultimately denied Ruiz's appeal as well. The denial by both state and federal courts meant the conviction and sentence stood. The legal system found the evidence presented insufficient to overturn the death sentence based on the bias claims. This outcome left the questions raised by the juror affidavits unresolved in terms of legal remedy for Ruiz. The execution of Wesley Ruiz was carried out on February 1, 2023. This occurred despite significant legal challenges. These challenges raised serious questions about both the state's execution drug protocols and claims of racial bias during his trial. The case is marked by the tragic loss of Senior Cpl Mark Nix. It also highlights ongoing debates within the criminal justice system. These debates include the ethics of lethal injection drug sourcing and the persistent issue of potential bias in capital sentencing. Ruiz's execution underscores the complexities and controversies surrounding the death penalty in Texas. It serves as a case study in the legal and ethical challenges that continue to face the system. the questions raised by his appeals remain relevant to discussions about capital punishment reform.